about leverage. With every passing day, we have more and more leverage because we have more and more capabilities. We're hitting them harder and harder, and they have less of an ability to defend themselves. So we're pressing the offensive every single day, creating all the leverage the president needs for the outcome he wants.
So it sounds like you think they're running out of water, both of the drones and the missiles.
When you look, I mean, they're sending in much less drones. They're being decimated now. You know, at some point, I don't think there'll be anybody left maybe to say we surrender, but they're being decimated. And when you look also, all of a sudden they apologized to the Middle Eastern states that they shot at them. I was very surprised to see they did that, but you mark that down as a victory for us and for the Middle Eastern states who are really friends of ours. But I guess they're not going to be shooting at them anymore. They apologized, and we'll see what happens. But that's a big loss. That's a surrender right there. I called it a surrender today. When they apologized and said they're not shooting at them anymore, that's really a surrender to those states and to us.
Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a closer look at a recent Senate hearing that has been getting a lot of attention online. The hearing focused on a major political issue that is shaping the conversation in Washington right now, with senators questioning officials and debating what the next steps should be for the country. Moments like these often reveal not just the facts of an issue, but also the deeper political divide about how problems should be solved. Before we dive into the details, if you're new here, this channel is called 45thPerspective, where we break down political events, hearings, and major stories so that you can understand what's really being said and what it might mean for everyday Americans. If you find this kind of analysis helpful, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future discussions. And if you want to support the channel even further, you can also check out patreon.com/45thPerspective, where your support helps keep the content going and allows us to keep covering important political developments like this. Now, let's talk about what actually happened during this Senate hearing. The hearing brought together several senators who questioned government officials and experts about the issue at hand. As is often the case in Washington, the discussion wasn't just about facts. It was also about how those facts are interpreted and what policies should follow. On one side, some senators focused on concerns about national security, stability, and the potential risks of the situation. They asked pointed questions about what actions had been taken, whether the government had responded appropriately, and what the long-term strategy would be moving forward. Their argument essentially centered on the idea that the United States needs to be cautious but also decisive when dealing with major international or domestic challenges. They emphasized the importance of accountability and wanted clear answers about who made certain decisions and why. Other senators approached the issue from a different perspective. Instead of focusing mainly on immediate responses or security concerns, they raised questions about the broader context. They wanted to know how the situation developed in the first place and whether previous policies may have contributed to the current tensions. In their view, understanding the root causes is just as important as reacting to the crisis itself. Some of them also expressed concern about unintended consequences of government actions, warning that short-term decisions can sometimes create long-term complications. During the hearing, several officials were asked to explain their actions and provide detailed timelines of what happened. These kinds of hearings can sometimes feel like political theater, but they also serve an important function. Senators use them to put information on the public record, to pressure officials to clarify their decisions, and sometimes to expose disagreements within government agencies. One thing that stood out during this hearing was the tone of some of the exchanges. There were moments when senators seemed genuinely concerned and focused on finding solutions, but there were also moments when the conversation became more political. That's not unusual in Washington, especially when an issue has major implications for national policy or public opinion. From a viewer's perspective, it's important to separate the political messaging from the actual facts being discussed. For example, several senators highlighted specific events and timelines that raised questions about how quickly officials responded and whether communication between agencies was effective. Those are legitimate questions that deserve answers, regardless of which political party someone supports. At the same time, other senators emphasized that complex situations rarely have simple explanations. They argued that decisions are often made with incomplete information and under intense pressure. From that point of view, judging those decisions after the fact can be difficult because policymakers are dealing with real-time uncertainty. Personally, when I watch hearings like this, I try to look at both sides of the argument. On one hand, oversight is a crucial part of democracy. The Senate has a responsibility to ask tough questions and make sure government officials are acting responsibly. Without that kind of oversight, mistakes might never be addressed and the public might never get clear explanations. On the other hand, it's also true that political incentives sometimes shape how these hearings unfold. Senators know their statements will be clipped, shared on social media, and used to influence public opinion. That can sometimes lead to dramatic exchanges that are more about messaging than problem solving. What really matters for viewers is understanding the bigger picture. Hearings like this are part of a long process of policy debate in the United States. They can influence future legislation, shape diplomatic decisions, and affect how government agencies operate. In other words, what happens in these rooms in Washington can eventually have real consequences for people across the country. For ordinary Americans, the key question is how these debates translate into policy. Will the hearing lead to new laws, changes in strategy, or additional investigations? Or will it simply become another moment in the ongoing political debate? That's something we'll likely learn more about in the weeks ahead as lawmakers continue discussing the issue. Another thing worth remembering is that these hearings are often just one piece of a much larger story. Behind the scenes, there are intelligence reports, diplomatic conversations, and policy meetings that the public never sees. The hearing gives us a glimpse into that world, but it doesn't always reveal the entire picture. That's why it's so important to watch these events critically. Listen to the questions being asked, pay attention to the answers, and think about what information might still be missing. When you do that, you start to see how complicated many of these issues really are. At the end of the day, this hearing reflects the broader challenges facing policymakers today. They're trying to balance security, diplomacy, public opinion, and political realities all at the same time. Sometimes those priorities align, and sometimes they conflict. What we saw in this Senate hearing was essentially that tension playing out in real time. Senators pressing for accountability, officials defending their decisions, and both sides trying to shape the narrative about what happened and what should happen next. For viewers like us, the goal isn't just to pick a side. It's to understand the arguments, examine the evidence, and think carefully about what policies make the most sense moving forward. That's the perspective we try to bring here on 45th Perspective, looking at the facts, considering different viewpoints, and encouraging thoughtful discussion about the issues that affect the country. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And again, if you'd like to support the work we're doing here, you can visit patreon.com/45thPerspective. Your support helps the channel grow and allows us to continue covering important political stories. Now I'd like to hear from you. What did you think about the hearing? Do you think the senators asked the right questions, or do you feel there are still important issues that weren't addressed? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation respectful and constructive.